Oh, yeah, sorry, Martin's...
He's got COVID, hasn't he? He brought it back from Germany with him, unfortunately. Yeah, so I guess that's where we are with it. You ready to rock?
We're not live streaming, are we?
So thank you for that. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Broadland District Council Cabinet meeting of the 19th of July. Just to remind you that this evening's meeting is being live streamed, so you will find yourself on YouTube. First item on the agenda. Oh, well, actually, let's go around and introduce ourselves. So I'm Sean Vincent. I'm leader of Broadland District Council, and over to you, Jonathan.
Fran Mymark, I'm a portfolio holder for housing and wellbeing.
Jo Cobblestone, portfolio holder for economic development.
Judy Leggett, portfolio holder for environmental excellence.
Okay, thank you for that. And if we could just then turn to the senior officer team to do the same.
I'm Trevor Holden. I'm the Managing Director of Broadland and South Norfolk Councils.
George Stanton, Assistant Director for Economic Growth. And Phil Courtier, Director of Place.
And Jamie Sinsby, Director of People and Communities.
And Emma Hodds, Chief of Staff and Monitoring Officer.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, so that moves us on then to declarations of interest on items on tonight's agenda. Is there anything anyone needs to declare? No? Okay, if there is, as we go through and you discover, do let me know. Next item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
So we've received apologies and absence from Councillor Monker.
Thank you for that. We then move to item 3 and 4, being the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of June, starting at page 6. I'll take those on block. So if there's anything in there that anyone feels needs updating or changing, please communicate now. Fran?
Did you need to record apologies from Martin Murrell as well? I know he's not on the panel here, but...
I don't think we normally would, but we will recognise that he's not here and perhaps we'll add him to the list then. Okay, so minutes. Any comment on the minutes, or can I take those as being correct, in which case I'll sign those off? Yep, okay, I'll sign those off. Moves us on then to public speaking. I'm not aware of any.
No public speaking.
No, okay, thank you. Looking around the room, I can't see any additional members, so I can't introduce them to speak when they want, so I won't. Overview and Scrutiny Committee, as we heard, unfortunately Martin is suffering from COVID at the moment, so we wish him well, but we do have the draft minutes if there's anything we want to pick up out of those. I believe that there's nothing additional to coming out of their meeting from last week, but if anyone feels differently, just flag it up when we get to that point. That moves us on then to item 8, which is the place shaping panel, page 14. So I just ask us to receive those minutes. And there's no items in there for us to deal with, so we'll deal with that one. Environmental excellence panel, Judy?
Yes, will the Cabinet please receive those? The 2 items are later on the agenda.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll receive those. Economic success panel.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask Cabinet to receive the minutes of the economic success policy panel, which was held at Carrowbreck. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Item 11 has been withdrawn, so that moves us on then to item 12, starting at page 341. Okay, so over to you, Phil. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
So the report before you is a report that seeks to establish a structure for future borrowing, which would be agreed by all the Greater Norwich partners to create a recyclable fund for the Greater Norwich area. Although it does give an example, a model of a specific site, in this case Long Stratton, it is not seeking funding for any specific project. It is establishing that structure. The key points to note from the report are that it seeks the ability to draw down up to £20 million from PWLB to enable the relevant lead authority at the time to invest or lend the money into a specific project. The lead authority would then secure repayments from a relevant developer or from the project, and that can be then reinvested back into a strategic investment fund. In the meantime, the repayments for the original borrowing would be taken from the pooled SIL fund, the IF, too many acronyms I know, but that's the Infrastructure Investment Fund. And then finally, recommendation 4 agrees that the GNGB would be delegated authority to effectively allocate those funds, notwithstanding the fact that obviously the lead authority would have to take any specific project through their own committee process to agree that. That is the report in front of you.
Okay, thank you for that. Phil, Fran, anything you want to add at this point?
Not anything specific. Sorry. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, nothing specific. Just I'd like to propose it as Phil has outlined the recommendations now. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So yeah, just to propose it as it is. I just think it's a really good way of recycling the money and putting some flexibility into the system, really. So that's my view. Thank you.
Okay, Fran, thank you for that. Judy? No, Trudy?
Yeah, I've just got a question on the last paragraph of 11.5 on page 350, which actually it may be that the Section 151 officer will need to reply. It's about the government recently consulting on legislative changes to the MRP calculation, the minimum revenue provision. Just wanted to check that this won't affect us in any way should we want to go forward and borrow money in the future.
I can confirm I'm not aware of anything that's in the suggested change that would affect this at all. So the MRP changes aren't going to affect this agreement.
Okay, thank you for that. Judy, do you want to come in at that point?
Yes, before I second the proposal, because I think it sounds a very good scheme, and especially, using Broadland Link Road as an example, something I'm quite passionate about. But could you just tell me, does this include the ability of Norfolk County Council to have a project in their own right?
Julie, that is a very good question to which I should immediately know the answer. And the simple answer is yes, I believe it does, because they are a partner on the GNGB, and if they want to deliver a project themselves, then they could. But it's more likely that it would be a project that is led by the respective 3 districts as the collecting authorities. That's a less than definitive answer. I appreciate that. But in the nicest possible way, I'm going to get myself out of a slight hole by now, because this report doesn't have to define who can be the borrower, who would want to borrow that. If anyone does want to draw down that money in due course, then that would be something that can be that would have to be something that would be decided at that time. And each of the respective leaders on the GNGB, because in recommendation 4, the GNGB are delegated the authority to approve that, and that is a unanimous decision-making body. So let's say any partner came forward with a scheme, whether it was county or any of the districts came forward with a scheme that they wanted to deliver, then each of the respective representatives of the councils would have the right to effectively veto that if it was not something you wanted to see progress. Thank you for your question then.
I'm pleased to second the proposal.
Okay, so thank you for that. If I've understood you correctly, then, so the county council is a partner of the Greater Norwich.
So the Greater Norwich Growth Board, you've got obviously within the Growth Board, you have the County Council as a council body for this fund. The Warwickshire Council, South Norfolk, Norwich and London as partners within the Greater Norwich Growth Board.
So does that mean, taking that to the next stage, the LEP could do the same?
Potentially, if they had a project, but they've not to date led as a lead authority. So potentially, but it's never been raised before.
Okay. Any other questions, Joe? And then Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to one of the recommendations, 13.3 on page 351. It talks about the Greater Norwich Growth Board to be granted delegated authority to sign the legal agreement together with the Section 151 officers under the direction of Norfolk County Council. And I just wanted to know who specifically from the Greater Norwich Growth Board needs to sign it. Does it have to be unanimous and everyone signing it, or can it just be selected members of the Greater Norwich Growth Board, please? Thank you.
So again, when it's the Greater Norwich Growth Board, it is unanimous.
Thank you.
Can I just come back, because one of the things with this, the way it's structured is that the reason I'm saying it's more likely to be one of the districts, because as local.
Sorry, Phil, just use the mic because it doesn't
I'm so
go
sorry.
on to the other one if not.
Yeah, let me start again. The reason why I know I've been slightly vague, but it is highly likely that neither the county nor the LEP would ultimately be the lead authority. And that's because under the way this is structured is, because it's a recyclable fund, you're going to need to get repayments. And the way you're going to get repayments generally is via a planning application process. Now, the county could effectively perhaps have an education scheme that it wanted to lead on and capture money back. But it's highly unlikely, because ultimately you'd have to get repayments from a school that it was delivering itself and then repay itself. So it's unlikely to happen. Whereas, for example, the model that's been presented in the report of Long Stratton, where in that case, South Norfolk would loan the money, front fund the bypass, and then recoup that money from the developer. That is more likely. This is really set up to facilitate that sort of arrangement and that sort of front funding, which is more suited to the three districts rather than the county or to the LEP.
As ever, clear as mud.
That's what I'm here for, just to clarify everything.
So thank you for that. Jonathan, I think you were next.
Yeah, just a quick question. Obviously, I think this is a really good idea. It's a really good plan to actually get some infrastructure get some infrastructure projects happening. The Public Works Loan Board, obviously we know that that's been set up to give us the opportunity to do this. Nationally, will there be any change on that? Will they sort of change how they're doing that? Because obviously I know that that's a really good fund at the moment you can get the money from, but will they see changes as the government sort of maybe look to squeeze money from other places, or?
No, because this is something that was enshrined in the city deal. And so that is something that is still being established. And actually this makes sure that we ensure that we have access to that money and that fund is established effectively in perpetuity rather than losing that deal.
Okay, thank you for that. Phil, anything for anybody else? No? Okay, so the recommendations are on page 350. They've been proposed and seconded. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay, so that then moves us on to page 390, enforcement policy, which I believe, Nick, you're coming to tell us about. Apologies, I missed you earlier on the introductions, or were you not in the room?
Chair, I wasn't in the room. for the
You were dealing with our
introductions.
emergency.
I was.
Indeed. So thank you for that. So did you want to introduce yourself and then take us through the report?
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'm Nick Howard. I'm the Assistant Director Regulatory. I also have responsibilities for emergency planning, which catch me this evening, I'm afraid. And to my right is Andrew Grimley, who's our newly started Senior Manager, Emergency Planning, Environmental Protection even Manager. And Andrew's here for the difficult questions. Just say that now.
Okay, so challenge has been laid down by Nick for Andrew. Over to you, Nick.
Okay, this report before you presents an overarching proposed enforcement policy at Appendix 2. This is for adoption to replace the Council's existing enforcement policy at Appendix 1, and that policy was last revised in 2015. I should just say that if it weren't for the intervention of the COVID-19 pandemic, then you would have seen a proposed update to this policy before now. This policy was, as proposed, was developed after reviewing a range of policies elsewhere in other local authorities, but also in other enforcement agencies. We're looking to bring you to the best of all of those. And that will really manifest itself when we are tested in dealing with enforcement matters and when we face any challenges. So some considerations have been refreshed and updated. Several are new, such as those involving vulnerable people and minors. And the proposed policy establishes the overarching approach, the context, the general considerations to a range of services and functions that are listed in the policy. It addresses key expectations and requirements, and some of those come out of the National Regulators Code, which we reference as a background paper in the report. It's perhaps important to say that underneath this overarching enforcement policy, you will see come forward a range of service-specific enforcement policies, and they contain a very large amount of detail which, given the range of subjects, wouldn't be appropriate to try and squeeze into one overarching enforcement policy for you. So those are becoming more complex over time. So there'll be a great deal of detail in those, and it'll often vary widely from one to another. So we don't want to create that confusion or conflict. Just really finally to say that we have, when developing this policy for you, sought as far as possible that a common approach reflecting the sovereign nature of both councils, but enabling the officers to not have uncertainty as to which policy should they be following. We've tried to bring you as common an approach as we can do that will reflect all of the needs in both Broadland and in South Norfolk. The Environmental Excellence Policy Development Panel has considered the draft policy, suggested some considerations, and they've been built into what you see before you here. So recommendation in this case is that Cabinet to recommend to Council to agree the adoption of the proposed overarching enforcement policy at Appendix 2 to replace the existing overarching enforcement policy, retaining its other thematic enforcement policies, certainly for the time being. I may need some assistance with recommendation 2 because it's not in the paper in front of me. Is there someone who can assist?
Okay, so do you want to do that, please, Emma?
Of course I can, Chair. So recommendation 2 is being proposed to add to the report in front of you, which is to delegate to the Assistant Director for Regulatory in consultation with the portfolio holder for environmental excellence to enact any amendments advised by the legal team following completion of their review.
Okay, thank you for that. Judy, is anything you want to add at this point?
I don't think there's really anything I can add other to stress that this is the overarching one, and more detailed ones will sit below it, depending on the type of enforcement. However, I just want to say the Assistant Director referred to amendments to do with the the safeguarding of minors. I just think that the wording around the adult safeguarding is a bit woolly and could imply that the Adult Safeguarding Board is a voluntary organisation, when I don't think it is. But I wondered if you could possibly check that out for me, please.
Chair, just to assist, that's at paragraph 107, and there's a wording which is perhaps clumsy and we could improve upon, so we'll do that as suggested.
Thank you. And so, other than that, I'm very happy to propose the two recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Judy, Fran, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy to second this proposal. I think it gives some structure sort of going forward, and obviously, you know, the other one was very much out of date, as you said. So, yeah, I'm happy to second this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Fran, any other questions, comments? Okay, looks like Andrew's going to get off easy. So, fair enough. Okay, so the recommendation has been proposed and seconded, which is on page 395, plus the second recommendation, which relates to delegating to the Assistant Director for Regulatory in consultation with the portfolio holder for environmental excellence to enact any amendments advised by the legal team following the completion of their review, plus also the update that has been requested by the portfolio holder in relation, I believe it's to paragraph 107, you said?
Yes.
So that's what we're voting on. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay, so thank you for that. That moves us on then to Economic Growth Strategic Plan at page 422. Good evening, George, and Deborah as well. So, who's presenting tonight? Over to you, Deborah.
So the Economic Growth Strategic Plan in front of you has been developed to basically show the activities that the Economic Growth team will be undertaking over the next 5 years to against the Council's delivery and strategic plans. To develop this plan, we worked with large numbers of stakeholders across public and private sector, Norfolk and into Suffolk as well, and we've worked very closely with the Economic Success Policy Development Panel. The plan proposes 4 main priority areas to support growth, innovation and skills, and we would like to promote the area to attract more inward investment. We've identified 3 high-performing cluster groups, along with 2 with the potential for high growth, where our efforts would be focused to maximise the impact of the team. So the summary document outlines the key activities for Broadland with measurable outcomes. Over the next few months, we will be working closely with the new Clean Growth and Sustainability Manager to develop an action plan which we will bring forward to members as part of the performance management process. Over to George.
No, thank you, Deborah. That's an excellent summary. This has been a really exciting project for the Economic Growth team to embark on. And what we've done is to collate a body of evidence and what we hope to be an external facing document. And the consultation with stakeholders has been a really interesting journey. And we hope that this document summarises the ambition set out in the delivery plan. And that's promoting our areas as a place that businesses want to invest in and grow, attracting investment into our areas, build a productive, high-performing and dynamic economy for the future, and to create an inclusive economy which promotes skills and job opportunities for all. I'll refer you to the recommendations on the correct page, 422. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. George, Joe, and Deborah. Joe?
Thank you both for that. Thank you. This is it's really great that this has now come forward and very timely in light of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. This was very well received when we had our meeting at Carrowbreck House. And it would have actually been nice to sort of probably let other cabinet members see the strategic plan as part of this as another appendix. But I know we've got quite a lot of pages in our cabinet papers tonight. So yes, so I would like to propose the recommendation 7.1 on page 425 with a caveat. There are some minor amendments that I have discussed with the Director of Place just prior to the meeting. And I would like those changes made to the Broadland summary documents, the external facing document, before it is published publicly. So I don't know if I can take advice from Emma. I just wonder whether I could do a similar thing and add 7.2 that that we can enact these amendments in agreement with the Assistant Director of Economic Growth and the portfolio holder.
Can I suggest those amendments are made prior to the document coming to council?
Yes, thank you.
That would then be prior to it being published, if
Thank
that
you, Chair.
works.
The agenda goes out tomorrow. I'm sure George and Deborah will be swift. But I have seen those amendments and I'm confident that they can get those done. I would suggest this evening that you delegate those amendments to be made, but then the recommendation can go through to council with those amendments made because we've got time to capture that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. No pressure then. Okay, so thanks for that. Did you want to come in, Trevor?
Chairman, yeah, only just presumably then the amendments are administrative or minor in nature. And probably worth including that in the recommendation so it's quite clear that the substantive document is the substantive document. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Trudy?
I would, it's the summary document. I would simply, you could do a 2, but you could put and use the Broadland summary as an external facing document subject to minor alterations as agreed between the Assistant Director Economic Growth and the portfolio holder for economic development.
Thank you.
Okay, so Joe, Trudy, you're happy with those? Yep. Okay, any questions? Judy?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say how pleased I am to see the clean energy and technology and other green issues included, environmental issues, I should say. I beg your pardon. I was just slightly confused, I think, at on page 434, where I was looking at the right, it's the first column, and the first column in the preceding page starts off on transport and then says while this is under the remit of the county council, which I understand, then that mentions digital connectivity. And I just wondered which it was talking about, or both.
It's talking about both. So we're classing digital connectivity as a key piece of infrastructure for business and for our residents moving forward. But we also talk about the requirements for practical and physical transport as well. So they should be 2 separate boxes.
Right, thank you. And also, I might have missed it amongst all these papers, but is there reference in there to working with UEA and City College?
There is in the larger document. I'm not sure it's specifically mentioned in the summary, but it is in the full background papers.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from anybody? No? Okay, so the recommendation 7.1 has been proposed and seconded on page 425, plus the amendment to update the summary document with speed. Ready for tomorrow, I think was what Emma said. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That's a exciting document. So thank you for that. I meant to say that before that. So it's exciting that we've got that strategy come forward. So thank you for that, George. Thank you, Deborah. Okay, so that moves us on then to item 15, the Shared Prosperity Fund Investment Plan. That starts at page 442. So you again, Deborah?
Nina's just joining us as well. Nina and I have been working on the investment plan. So Broadland's been allocated 1.31 million of shared prosperity funds to cover the 3-year period from April 2022. To be able to access this funding, we have to submit an investment plan by the 1st of August this year. So the report in front of you outlines the proposed work streams for Broadland. The delegations requested are those that we need to be able to finalise the plan and submit it in time for these deadlines. It's proposed that the funding is used to build on existing work streams to maximise the benefit. Firstly, using the Pride in Place programme, working with town and parish councils to create and improve facilities, infrastructure and amenities across our communities. We propose expanding our sector support groups, working with businesses to grow and encourage research and development. And finally, we would like to support increased numbers of higher level employment with working to and attracting inward investment by working with our businesses to support them taking on apprentices and encouraging placements. So the breakdown of the funding for the 3-year period is included in section 3.1 of the report. Funding must be spent in the appropriate financial year. Any unspent monies will be lost and a penalty of the same value will be applied to the following year. So we'll be working closely with the finance team to monitor our expenditure. The funding is predominantly revenue, however, some capital is included. The split shown in the report is based on the recommendations from the guidance document. However, there is some flexibility in this. Our allocation also includes a 4% admin fee to cover the costs of processing the funding. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to propose the recommendations to Cabinet 6.1 to 6.5. I just want to update Cabinet that we have had our first board meeting. I think it was about the 30th of June. And at that meeting, the terms of reference for the governance arrangements for this UK Shared Prosperity Fund were agreed, and the terms of reference for that board is now available to Cabinet members if they would like to see that. So yeah, really pleased with this. So I'm happy to propose that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Did you also want to just amend that recommendation at the same point?
Yes.
6.1.
Yes. I could amend 6.3, the Director of Place to finalise the initial and ongoing governance arrangements, including, should I have it including the terms of reference for the board?
No, sorry, I thought you were amending 6.1. Because at the moment it doesn't set out what the it sets out within this report, but actually it doesn't set it out within this report.
Sorry, Chair.
So we should refer it back to the relevant place being 1.2, if that's okay. Sorry.
That would be perfect. Sorry, I slightly missed that part. Yes, so if we could alter that and include the table in 1.2, that would be really good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So for clarity, just to get the wording right there. So 6.1 as a recommendation now reads to approve the principal areas of investment as set out in 1.2, which highlights the thematical elements of where the money is to be spent in relation to communities and place, support for local business, and people and skills. So that's where we're referencing it back to, just for clarity. Okay, so thank you for that, Joe. Trudy? Okay, thank you for that. Any questions, Judy?
You'll have to forgive me, I've got a rather silly question, but I saw there was reference in here to blue space. I'm used to the terminology green space, but could you clarify, please?
Thank you. That just really refers to water courses and water bodies for wildlife and biodiversity.
Okay, thank you for that. Also, sorry, I've just got a question that I've noticed under 4.10, talks about capital funding, and it talks about match funding with town and parish councils, which is not something that's part of our community infrastructure funding scheme. So that might be something that we need to look at in the future, but just that item, it's not part of the current community infrastructure funding scheme that I'm aware of, unless anyone else is. Yeah, okay. Anything for anybody else? Jonathan?
Yeah, just on 4.4, it's talking about the mutual aid groups. Obviously, in this report, it does highlight that most of the mutual aid groups were linked with the town and parishes and everything like that. But I know that some of the groups were obviously set up in a rush, and the governance of those groups, obviously any help we give to communities, it would be good to know that we have sort of checked the governance of the community groups ourselves to, you know, I think if we're putting our name to something, you know, to say that that community group is something that can help, then I think we need to be checking the governance of it. As I do know that obviously when the groups started, there were some that were using our logo and we didn't know anything about them, if you know what I mean. So yeah, just to sort of check the governance of them, just to make sure that we are supporting the, you know, the groups that help.
Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan. Any other questions? No? Okay, so we have the recommendations that have been proposed and seconded and slightly amended on 6.1. And they're on page 451. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. That moves us on then to the Norfolk Strategic Fund Business Builder, page 454. And we have a change of team. So, hi, Dave. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I assume you're presenting it,
I will.
even though George is still sitting there. He looks pleased with himself tonight, doesn't he? Got some good chunky stuff on here. I think I've bought you enough time now, Dave. So over to you.
Thank you very much. You have. Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks Cabinet's endorsement for the delivery of this suite of interventions to complement our business support offer. And that's been enabled by the Norfolk Strategic Fund. And it's also to request authority to be delegated to the Assistant Director for Economic Growth in consultation with the portfolio holder for economic growth to use the grant monies in support of this business builder program. I'd really just add that realistically, this is the right intervention at the right time. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. So, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased with this scheme, and at last we'll be using our Norfolk Strategic Fund grant money and in a great way helping our startups and small businesses, which is so important to Broadland, and fully utilising our lovely training facility at Carrowbrick. So yes, I think this is absolutely the right thing to do in a very sort of timely way. But I'd just like to go back to the recommendations. And 8.2, I would just like that to be slightly more specific and reference the table 2.
I think you mean 8.1. Sorry.
Determine the balance. Oh, it was to do with the determine the use of the balance of the grant monies in accordance to the programme detailed in the report. Table 2. I thought it was actually 8.2. to do with the determine the use of the balance of the grant monies in accordance with the programme detailed in the report in table 2 on page 460. Unless
Okay,
Chair-
so I think if I try and unravel that, so I think what you're trying to do is where it talks about the revised program in 8.1,
Yes.
rather than revised program, you want that to refer to table 2, which is the revised program, but is
Yes.
for clarity, it is table 2. Yeah. And I think our finance portfolio holder has a question in relation to balances. So are you okay with that, Joe, as proposing that in that way? Yeah. Trudy?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions. I just wanted to double check, and there is a reason why I'm checking, whether South Norfolk are doing this as well, or whether it's just us doing it.
So the programme is not running in South Norfolk at present. It's not proposed to.
Okay, thank you. That is what I thought was happening. So I would just encourage the portfolio holder to keep an eye on Officer Time to carry this programme out for us. That would be one of my questions, because it is more difficult, or one of my requests, if that's okay, because it is more difficult when one council is doing it and the other one isn't. I get that. And secondly, it is around recommendation 2, where it says use of the balance of the grant monies in accordance with the programme detailed in the report. I think I remember from your presentation at Carabrec, I believe it's if any of the other monies aren't requested, that are in table 2, then you will feel free to allocate monies as and when to make sure you use the money.
Yeah, the idea was to have several windows, and with the applications, we can then determine which of the schemes is more popular than the others and rebalance the pots. So table 2 is merely the sort of where we think the starting point might be, but the end point could be quite different. But yes, exactly. It is our intention to rebalance the pots to make sure that the funds are utilised.
That's exactly as I remember it. I just don't know if that could be worded a bit better. But other than that, I'm happy to second the recommendations. But I just don't know if that's quite clear, whether somebody come up with some magic words to make it look better.
Okay, well, the monitor was just thinking about that. I just pick up on the language that was used there, because table 2 is the outcomes in its totality, but where the money is actually spent within the categories could be flexed, which is the bit you're talking about there.
Yes. So the proposed budget, we've put the amounts in the proposed budget, but the specific items on the left-hand column is where the actual grants are, and they could be, these figures could be different. The total won't change. What I'm saying is it's totally dependent on the demand that we get from businesses and how we market it and so on. And as we close the window at the end of 3 months, we can look and see how the program has gone, whether we need to target different styles of business, whether it's a different area that we may want to approach, or even a different cluster. And then we can rebalance these pots according to the demand, so that we don't run out of one or another just by setting an arbitrary figure.
Yes. Okay. So
Let's clear that up.
Again, for clarity, so the total budget will not be exceeded of the £428,527. As the grants come forward, they come forward on an iterative process. So therefore, you'll be able to judge how much of that funding you have left that you can spend on the next series of grants as they come forward, if I've understood that correctly.
Precisely that.
Yes, brilliant. Okay. Do you have some wording yet, or shall I go to Jonathan's
Nicely
question?
filled, Chairman.
Okay, so over to the monitoring officer who has the new phrases for the recommendation.
Caught me out on that one. I didn't know that one was coming. So recommendation 2 starts with agrees to delegate authority to the Assistant Director of Economic Growth in consultation with the portfolio holder for economic development to determine. We will remove the rest of that and say the best use of the revised programme of funding at table 2 to ensure the grant is correctly used.
Perfect.
Okay, so Joe as proposer and Trudy as seconder, are you comfortable with those? Yep. Yes, but we haven't come to that piece yet, but yeah. Okay, so questions then, please, Jonathan?
Mine was just to say that in 1.3 it says 428573, and on the tables it says 428527. I know it's only a small difference, but should that not be the same figure? So yeah. Oh,
Okay, so which is the correct figure?
That I can't tell you tonight,
Oh,
but we will get it right.
okay, so again, from a governance point of view, if we're authorising the spend of £428,527 as the total budget, and in fact that's not the total budget, what do we do? Sorry. It's probably within scope of tolerance.
Well, you need to set. I would suggest you set a tolerance. So if you're being asked to sign off that 428527, do we know what the tolerance is on that, Dave? Or
No, I don't, but I'm happy to accept that is the right figure. Look forward to it, and if it's not, we won't do that as a budget.
Okay, so we're going to work to the £428,527 as the
That's
budget
it.
as set out in table 2. Thank you for spotting that, Jonathan, because we didn't notice that earlier.
That's the correct figure.
That is the
428,527.
Okay, so that's the number we're working to. So thank you. Any other questions in relation to this? No. Okay, so just get back to the recommendations. So recommendations are on page 463, have been proposed and seconded as the amended recommendations on 8.1 has been amended and 8.2 has been amended. 8.3 stands as it is. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you for that. That moves us on then to page 469, being the forward plan. So is there any elements of the forward plan that Cabinet want to discuss further, or do we take that as it is at this point in time? Judy.
Apologies, but there seem to be 2 items missing from the forward plan. And one is the depot refurbishment, and the other is the environment excellence strategies, which is having a refresh, but will need to come back through panel, council, cabinet and council.
Okay, so can we?
Yep, I'll
add
take those away and
those?
I'll add those in. I'll check with officers on dates and add those in.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other pieces for Cabinet on the forward plan? No? Okay, so we can take the forward plan as that stands at this point in time with the added pieces. Okay, so that then moves on to item 18, which is the exclusion of the press and public. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business, because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Act Access to Information Variation Order 2006, would be disclosed to them.